I got divorced 6 months after getting married. The reason was my mother-in-law and my husband Bob. They called me a member of the family, yet on the other hand, they completely alienated and pushed me away. With the phrase, a total stranger. I'm Emily, and I married Bob, who was the same age as me, a year ago when we were 29. We lived in a house about a 10-minute walk from my in-laws' place. Bob had always lived with his parents, but when we started talking about marriage, we decided to rent an apartment halfway between our workplaces. However, my mother-in-law took it upon herself to find a vacant house near her home and signed the lease. From that house, it was nearly a 2-hour trip to my workplace, so I was quite resistant, but Bob accepted his mother's offer, saying, "Mom's paying the rent. Plus, it's a fairly new 2-story house with a garden. Isn't that great?" My mother-in-law, apparently the daughter of a wealthy family, had a husband who was married into her family. Before getting married, I met them a few times, but the father-in-law always seemed diminished, barely noticeable. A classic case of a henpecked husband. My mother-in-law took a liking to me. But not for my personality, she liked that I had no home to return to. My brother had married and taken over our family home, living with his 3 kids and our parents, so there was no place for me to return to. She thought I would devote myself as a member of her family. I thought it was an outdated way of thinking, but I was happy to be told, "Emily, you'll fit right in as a member of our family." And didn't mind it much. But I did find it a bit strange how much they rushed the marriage. "Need to get Bob married off quickly, or it'll be troublesome," his mother said insinuatingly. Right after the honeymoon, I realized that being a member of the family meant conforming to my mother-in-law's ideas. Our rented house, remodeled to her liking, didn't suit me at all. Colorful, flashy curtains, Rococo-style furniture with claw feet, and a Persian rug with a heavy pattern, all luxurious but cluttered and lacking harmony. When my mother-in-law said with a smile, "I got these from our family's furniture store to celebrate you joining our family. Isn't it wonderful?" I was dumbfounded, but I endured it because Bob was happy. But at that moment, I had a bad feeling. That feeling proved right. As soon as we started our married life, my mother-in-law began summoning me daily. She had me cook and criticized everything. Sloppy use of knives, wrong heat control, poor choice of dishes, too much oil, too salty. She made me never want to cook again. "You might have learned differently in your rural hometown, but now that you're part of our family, you need to learn our ways," she said coldly. Heartbroken, I returned home crying, only to have Bob say, "It's tough at first, but keep at it. Mom's being strict because she sees you as family. Think of it as tough love." So, I tried to rally and persevere. But being constantly criticized, I started losing confidence. It didn't help that they also disparaged my family. Even Bob started mocking me as a country girl, saying, "Guess you can't teach someone with a different upbringing." And just 2 months into our marriage, he began coming home late, leaving me alone. I started to wonder if this marriage was a mistake. During this time, my mother-in-law collapsed with a heart condition and had to be hospitalized. The cause was hypertension. According to the doctor, her blood was thick from too much salt and lack of exercise. Having never been in the position of a sick family member, I was at a loss for what to do. When I visited her, she yelled, "What a useless daughter-in-law. You're young and part of the family, so you should be taking care of me." Even my husband, who came with me, shrugged it off, saying, "Taking care of parents is the wife's job as a family member. I have work. So I'm leaving the post-discharge care to you." It's so unfair how they ridiculed me all this time, yet only wield the family member card when it suits them. Plus, as a full-time employee, did this mean I had to take over the household chores at my in-laws after she got discharged? When I brought this up to Bob, he said, "Then quit your job. As a family member, you should prioritize family over work." I was fed up. Then, unusually, my father-in-law spoke up, "It's not right to put it all on Emily. She's part of our family, so let's share the care between me, Bob, and Emily." But my mother-in-law quickly retorted sharply, "Husband, who's been adopted into our family, has no right to give me advice. And to suggest that Bob should help, that's outrageous. I can't burden my precious son with such troubles." Faced with these cold words, my father-in-law glared at my mother-in-law for a moment, unable to contain his anger, and then left the hospital room. I was surprised to see my father-in-law so angry. At the same time, I was moved to tears that he, despite his weaker position, had stood up for me. In the car on the way back, I said to Bob about what your father said earlier, and tried to start a conversation about the future care of his mother. But Bob dismissed it, saying, "Mom doesn't like it, so forget it. You know, she doesn't trust Dad at all." According to Bob, his mother, who was the sole heiress of a wealthy family, had an arranged marriage with his father. It seems she was forced into the marriage by her father, who favored his son-in-law, and from the beginning, she looked down on her husband. She never considered him as family, but rather, she always treated him like a butler or a servant. "That's so sad for your father." I couldn't help but blurt out. To which Bob replied, "Mom only considers me as family. Dad is a stranger to her. But he's still your father by blood, isn't he?" "Well, yes, but since Mom is the head of the family and considers Dad a stranger, that's what he is to me too." "That's terrible." "Why?" "Our family has a long lineage, and Dad, being an outsider, doesn't change his lineage." To Mom, only blood relations are trustworthy in the end. Shocked, I asked for confirmation. "So, I'm a complete stranger to both you and your mother since there's no blood relation, right?" "Well, yeah, that's about it." So much for being a part of the family. I was so angry that I decided to cut ties with such a family. After my mother-in-law was discharged, she became even more domineering. Since the original cause was hypertension, her diet needed to be the first thing to change. But since she had always ridiculed my cooking as too rural, I had no intention of cooking for her anymore. What about mine and Bob's meals? Meals cooked by a country girl like me are not suitable for someone suffering from illness. What's with that attitude? How dare you speak to me like that, a mere daughter-in-law? Oh. So I can do it? I like strong flavors, so I'll be generous with salt, pepper, and sauces. Even if you're my daughter-in-law, how can you treat your mother like this? Well, if we're not related by blood, that means we're strangers, right? Why should I bother being considerate to such a person? As I coolly responded, my mother-in-law was speechless. She immediately called Bob, who was at work, and started complaining loudly. I thought to myself, let her bark, but to my surprise, Bob left work early and came home. "What did you say to Mom?" "How could you, as a wife?" I was appalled at his mama's boy attitude. "Wife? What's that?" "What? A wife is a wife. I became your wife, but I never intended to be a daughter-in-law of this house. What kind of nonsense is that? Not even making meals for Mom. I won't cook for you anymore either. You probably didn't notice this morning since you never eat breakfast." "Why not? Why should I? Why would a stranger like me make meals for free?" "Who's a stranger?" "You're my wife. Have you forgotten already? I confirmed it before. Since I have no blood relation to you or your mother, I'm a complete stranger." With that, Bob was at a loss for words. I left Bob and my mother-in-law and went straight back to the rented house. And so, I began packing my belongings to send them to my parents' house for the time being. I had already explained the situation to my parents and my brother and his wife, and they agreed to temporarily store my belongings. While I was planning to stay in a hotel for a while and rent an apartment as soon as possible, I was surprised when my father-in-law showed up. He then told me something shocking. "Hey. I thought you just left suddenly, but then you sent a divorce paper. What's going on?" A few days later, I received a call from Bob. "What, you want a wife who won't cook for you, won't do your laundry, won't take care of you at all, a complete stranger? Are you still saying that? Let me make it clear, even if we don't divorce, I will never take care of you again. Are you okay with that?" With that, Bob fell silent. "Why not just have another woman come? You had a favorite girl at a nightclub even before we got married, right?" As I casually mentioned this, Bob's voice rose. "What are you talking about? Your father told me. You were quite smitten with her, even bringing her to your parents' house." Your mother said she was after the family's wealth and kicked her out, right? No wonder your mother was so eager to rush our marriage." "But Bob, you're still secretly seeing her, aren't you? Why not marry her?" "No way, that's out of the question. Mom wouldn't allow it. Well, maybe. But having affairs and cheating are enough reasons for divorce, so you'll have to pay alimony. I've got photographic evidence from a private detective. No way. Goodbye. Then, and please take care of the divorce papers. I said this and hung up the phone. Serves them right. Since then, things have apparently been tough at my in-laws' house. When my father-in-law came, he told me he was divorcing my mother-in-law and had put their house up for sale. Though he was an adopted son-in-law, he was trusted by my mother-in-law's father, and the house, built by her father, was in my father-in-law's name. Moreover, my mother-in-law's father is now in debt due to failed investments and refuses to take her back. Furthermore, I heard that my mother-in-law squandered her money, and the divorce settlement was meager. Now, Bob and his mother live in an old apartment, barely making ends meet. As for me, I didn't quit my job after marriage, so I'm still working hard at the same company. Since I divorced after just 6 months of marriage, I refunded the entire amount of the wedding gifts to those who had given them. Everyone hesitated to accept at first, but when I said, "Don't worry, I got a good sum from my ex-husband," they laughed and accepted. This way, I can work at this company without any lingering issues. My name is Linda. I've been married to my husband, George, for almost 2 years now. I'm currently pregnant with our long-awaited first child. Just hearing this, you might imagine that I'm living a blissful, smooth-sailing married life. I met my husband at a social gathering. It's only natural that I, who was once a plain and unsatisfying woman, would be drawn to him, who said with a gentile smile, "You have a modest and comforting aura." I believed that with him, I could build a happy family. As a wife, I decided to do my best in both my work and household chores. Yet, for some reason, my husband often seemed irritable. At first, I thought it was because of my job. Both my husband and I are corporate employees. Whenever I worked overtime, he would be in a bad mood the next day, sighing and saying, "I had to make do with ready meal yesterday. There was no hot water, so I just took a shower and nearly caught a cold." Feeling sorry that he had waited for me, I suggested, "Next time, feel free to eat something else first. Don't worry about the hot water, you can take a bath. I'll be fine with just a shower." But he scolded me, saying, "What's that? Do as you please. You make me suffer because of your overtime." The happiest he had been since our marriage was when I told him about my pregnancy. His face lit up instantly, and he joyfully said, "Well done. It's about time." I thought his moodiness must have been because he was eagerly awaiting a child. Perhaps he was secretly being pressured by his parents for a grandchild. I hardly had any contact with my in-laws. My husband seemed to be the one dealing with all their requests. Believing this, I looked forward to our future happiness. "I'm sure your parents will be delighted too," I said. "Huh? Oh, yeah. I'll let them know," he replied. But his happiness was short-lived. Once again, the days of his moodiness began. As the end of the year approached and my morning sickness worsened, I had to take time off from work. My husband suggested, "Let's skip going to my parents' house for New Year's." We used to visit his parents' home together, but this time he thought it was better for me to rest at home. I agreed with his proposal, and he seemed pleased. Actually, I had planned a family trip for the end of the year. Canceling now would mean paying a cancellation fee. And my mom was looking forward to it. "Sorry, but you'll have to sit this one out," he said. It was supposed to be our first family trip. Even though I was pregnant and my husband should have told his parents, I received no reaction from them. I wanted to join to tell them directly. "You wouldn't want to feel sick during the trip, right?" "Right, I understand. Please give my regards to your parents," I replied. That was all I could say. A few days later, he left for the trip with a large suitcase. Spending New Year's alone was lonely. In an attempt to cheer myself up, I decided to visit the nearby cake shop. I could eat my favorite jelly as much as I wanted. It was essentially binge eating. "Oh, isn't that Linda?" As I was leaving the store, I recognized the voice calling out to me. It was my mother-in-law. Wait, wasn't she supposed to be on a trip? I heard we wouldn't be doing New Year's visit this year, and I was worried about your health. But seeing you out and about like this is a relief. she said, concerned about my condition. She was apparently on her way to our apartment. She said with a giggle, "Linda, you like the cakes from here, right?" I just picked something at random for George. I was utterly confused by her cheerful demeanor. Mom, what about the trip? Oh, that. I started a part-time job recently and was asked to switch shifts unexpectedly. But George had gifted us a parents-only spa trip. So I contacted the inn and postponed it by a week. A parents-only spa trip? What does that mean? George was supposed to be on a trip. To uncover the truth, I took out my phone. I called George and switched to speakerphone. "Linda? What's up? How's the trip? Enjoying it?" "Yeah, I'm having a great time with my parents." My mother-in-law, standing in front of me, was shocked but gestured for silence with a shh. "Mom is here with me right now, you know?" Silence followed. Then I heard rustling and a young woman's voice asking, "Babe, who are you talking to?" "Your wife." Damn, why is this happening? I was supposed to be on a trip. Hey, Linda. Don't tell my parents, alright? It's embarrassing to admit your husband's cheating, especially for a coward like you. He didn't seem to realize the speakerphone was on. The mocking laughter of a man and a woman came through the phone. "Just make up some excuse that I'm still out," George said before ending the call. I felt a wave of nausea and instinctively covered my mouth. My mother-in-law gently stroked my back. Without her support, I probably would have obeyed my husband out of fear of displeasing his parents. But she comforted me, saying, "It's the cheating man who's at fault." Such a kind woman couldn't possibly dislike me. This realization gave me the courage to take a step forward. Accompanied by my mother-in-law, I returned home and decided to understand the situation fully. It turned out that my in-laws didn't know about my pregnancy. They were told I couldn't visit due to ill health. I was told not to contact them much because the pressure of being the eldest son's wife was the cause. When I confessed that I thought they disliked me, she laughed. "That's impossible. Linda, you are our dear daughter-in-law. We're genuinely happy about the grandchild." Her words made me burst into tears, and she comforted me while grumbling about George. As much as he's my son, he's the worst. It's not something I can apologize for, but I want to say it. I'm truly sorry. It's odd for a mother to ask, but what do you want to do now? "I'm on your side, Linda," she said gently. I told her, I want a divorce. His infidelity. His lies. His constant irritable attitude. Everything overwhelmed me, and I simply thought, I can't do this anymore. What had I been relying on in this marriage? For what reason had I been enduring it? I just didn't know anymore. "I understand. Leave it to me, you rest a bit," my mother-in-law said, putting me to bed before leaving, saying she had preparations to make. George returned home the next day at noon. Although he was supposed to stay for a few more days, he probably came back early just in case. I gripped my cell phone tightly in my hand. My enjoyable trip was ruined because of you. You haven't exposed me, have you? If you do, it's divorce. Divorce. Being divorced after being cheated on by your husband, that's just adding insult to injury, George sneered. Since when? Why did you cheat? Chloe is a colleague who joined the company last year. Unlike you, she's sweet and not nagging. When I told her you didn't do housework because of overtime, she got all upset, saying it's wrong to prioritize work over house chores. She's a really understanding woman, that Chloe, he said, comparing me to his affair partner. But strangely, by the next day, it didn't matter to me anymore. It seemed that my love for him had worn away without me noticing. I sighed and operated my phone. I stopped the recording, stood up, and opened the door to my room. "Mom, the recording is okay," I reported with a smile, and she turned to my father-in-law who had been hiding in the room, saying, "Well done, Linda. Now it's our turn." As his parents emerged from my room, George's eyes widened in shock. "What? Why are you two here?" "Linda, you tricked me." "Oh, you're the one who tricked us." Planning a trip for cheating and even arranging a spa trip for us, everything was prepared, wasn't it? What, cheating? What are you talking about? I heard everything from Linda's conversation with you on speakerphone yesterday. Being cheated on is a disgrace. The one who cheats is the lowest. You stupid son. His mother scolded. George bit his lip and glared at me. It's all Linda's fault. Using work as an excuse to neglect taking care of me, and when I have to do things myself, she doesn't even appreciate it. Telling me to bathe first, like she's giving me permission? Criticizing me, the worst kind of wife. What? Why should I, a man, do housework? A wife should quietly let her husband rest. Oh, George, come on. I got fed up and consulted Chloe. She said women focus on their kids once they have them. I was relieved you still had some womanly qualities. But once you got pregnant, it was all morning sickness. It made me feel sick too, it's just unbelievable. He was happy about the pregnancy because he thought I'd focus on the child? Not because we were having a child? It's like you're treating the child like a tool. I was shocked. The betrayal as a woman was one thing, but the fact that someone I once loved could treat life so callously hurt me the most. His mother's slap landed on George's cheek. She was crying. George, come on. I placed my hand on her trembling shoulder, and his father fixed his gaze on my husband. Under his stern gaze, my husband showed a look of fear for the first time. When did you become like this? Dad? I wanted to be like you. You never did housework, and Mom never complained or made demands like Linda does. Your mother was a homemaker and always at home. But I did what I could. I never left everything to her. I learned later that his father was indeed bad at housework and banned from the kitchen. Instead, he responded to his wife's requests through DIY. The custom shelves at their house were all made by him. George must have seen it but chose to ignore it. Even if I was a male chauvinist, how does that justify neglecting a pregnant wife? To use the life of our child, my grandchild, as a distraction from your affair? His father muttered in dismay. So, it's all Linda's fault. Marrying her was the mistake. At this point, George was yelling like a child. Something in me snapped. Excuse me? You're the one at fault, you lowest of the low. My spontaneous outburst left everyone speechless. It was the first time I had ever yelled at George. What's wrong with being sick morning to night? I'm pregnant. You should be caring, you worst kind of husband, man, and human being. Embarrassed about being divorced? Bring it on. I'll divorce you or whatever else it takes. I think I yelled enough for a lifetime. After that, the divorce went smoothly since I had recorded George's confession of his affair. I received a settlement of $20,000 and child support from my ex-husband, and the property division was completed. The affair partner, upon seeing the demand for damages, tried to play innocent, claiming, I didn't know he had a wife. But when told that George had confessed everything, she became irate and said, how dare a woman who's been dumped by her husband act so high and mighty? I had become much stronger. Not even an apology, and you have the nerve, I thought, refusing to reduce the $15,000 claim. She came to her senses and apologized, but I naturally refused. My ex-husband asked the affair partner to cover his alimony, but since he lost my income, he couldn't even afford the rent for the apartment and was struggling to pay his own alimony, so she refused. In an act of spite, Chloe, the affair partner, spread rumors at work claiming that she was troubled by being pursued by my ex-husband. Apparently, this led to him being completely shunned by his colleagues. However, it eventually came to light that the affair partner herself was involved with several men within the company. One of these men was the son of a high-ranking executive, and before the rumors could spread any further, she was fired. My ex-husband was disowned by his parents and became uncomfortable at his job. He seemed to think that reconciling with me would change his situation. When he sought to reconcile, I firmly rejected him, saying, no. Marrying you was a mistake. I won't repeat the same mistake ever again. I've changed my phone number, so there's no more contact. Now, I'm looking forward to starting anew and living a wonderful life with my unborn child.